Welcome back to another episode of Leadership Void Podcast. I'm Enrique with my co-host Vince to bring you the best in our veteran military spouse and first responder community. And Vince will introduce today's guest.
Thanks, Enrique. Yeah, from Baltimore, Maryland, I have a pleasure to introduce a friend of mine who is Katie Kilby. She is the founder and president of Reveille Grounds. Katie, welcome to the show. Let's start off. Tell us a little bit about you.
Yeah, thank you for having me, guys. Thrilled to be here and talk a little bit about what I'm up to. But first things first, I am Katie Kilby. I am a mom of two, a Marine Corps spouse, nonprofit professional, and founder of this little passion project of mine, both the Baltimore Military Muster and Reveille Grounds.
The fact that you are a military spouse running two different things at once, it's amazing. But tell us a little bit more about Reveille Grounds itself.
Yeah, absolutely. So I have been working in the military nonprofit space now for, the better part of 10 years. And as a spouse and as a service provider in this space, I quickly realized that it is incredibly hard as an individual to really know what services, programs, resources, and opportunities exist out there, especially locating the vetted ones that operate with integrity and being able to access them the first time and when you need them. I learned that lesson over and over during my time with Wounded Warrior Project, sitting with families at bedside at Walter Reed, helping them equip for their journey and transition for whatever laid next for them outside those doors of the hospital, but also out in the community as I was working with people that became friends and family and just helping them navigate this world. Also, my husband is a little bit of a sitting duck for all of the knowledge and resources and ideas swirling around in my head at all times. So in 2017, I founded what we call the Baltimore Military Muster. And this was just a way for the people that have something to offer, whether professionally or officially attached to a mission, have access to the people that are looking for something. So we run this as a meetup style event. We started out doing it monthly in 2017 at our local mission barbecue in Baltimore. And we were working to create real-time connections between those individuals with folks that represented a mission. And that could be a staff member, a volunteer board member, or even somebody that had a great experience at a retreat the month before and just wanted to be able to share that opportunity. So we kind of move a group of people around the room to build relationships, ask questions. And if you tell me that you're interested in fly fishing or water sports, then we would physically walk you across the room to introduce you to someone from Project Healing Waters or Heroes on the Water, or even Wounded Warrior Project, who frequently does similar events. But what became clear to us as we outgrew Mission Barbecue and relocated to a different location of Mission Barbecue, and then an American Legion, and then a restaurant downtown, and we just kept busting out of this space, that kind of impact, that camaraderie, those connections really need to exist 365 days a year. Doing this 4, 6, 12 times, it wasn't enough, right? There was just too much time in between those interactions to really be able to move this community forward collectively. So about a year ago, I seized a little more, I guess. I seized all of this downtime related to COVID and decided that it was time to launch our very own organization called Reveille Grounds. This is something that I have thought about for years, but really the bedrock program will be that Baltimore Military Muster. But it will also serve as a physical brick and mortar location in Baltimore City where veterans, transitioning service members, active duties, their loved ones, and the community that supports them can gather together, break bread, drink coffee, make those connections, meet with a peer navigator. But it'll also look a little bit like a co-working space for people like me who have a desk an hour away in Washington, D.C., but really see the value and potential of this very charming Baltimore city that we love and live in.
You know, Katie, I would say this is phenomenal what you're doing for these ideas that you had constructed in your head, and you outgrew every space. That shows the testament of the true value of the integrity of the nonprofits and the connections and the camaraderie you built. So kudos to you and Reveille Grounds for all you are doing. I'm very happy and pleased to hear that. So now you're welcome. Now, post-pandemic, what lessons learned either influence you or impacted your company?
Yeah, so Marine family over here. The term Semper Gumby is very ingrained in who we are, and COVID really did at first kind of take the muster out at the knees. Like many people, we spent a lot of time as a board really trying to think about how we could pivot that event into a virtual environment. But when we were having those conversations, even though our best attended muster ever was in February 2020, and we had our March date on the calendar, it was also when people were planning, family happy hours, and, we were learning this virtual world. And we just decided that we needed to put a pin in that model and use the time to drive people towards other opportunities that exist. And not try to champion ours when we really didn't think that the muster would translate well into a Zoom environment. There are days I worry that we made the wrong judgment call there, but when we relaunched the muster in October 2020 or 2021, a little over a year ago, that we had our best attendance yet. We had over 80 people. We met in a tented area outside of a local restaurant, and took all the COVID precautions that we could. And I think what I was emphasized for me in that entire process was staying nimble, asking people what it was that they wanted and how they wanted to engage with each other. And the feedback that we got in those early days was, we are zoomed out, right? That having those, working all day online, learning about that virtual structure, and then having a work happy hour, and then meeting with family and touching base with friends, adding another event was just not what we wanted to push out into the world. But we used that time to button up our application for our 1023, and we earned our 501c3 status and this time last year. So we officially have our 1-year anniversary. But we have also used this time to build our board, create some depth in knowledge and diversity of perspective and lived experience, and to really ensure that we're laying the right groundwork here. I think that so frequently in the nonprofit space, it's easy to pull that trigger really fast, throw out an idea, and just hope it sticks. But this has been a long time coming. It's been in my head for 10 years, taken a few different shapes and forms. But the other thing, when my professional world slowed down, and, full disclosure, I have a full-time job. I have 2 kids under the age of 5. And then I have this, what I call my non-lucrative side hustle. Being able to really step back and be thoughtful helped me to, I think, go about this the right way. We can maybe have a conversation in a year and see if that theory is right or not. But, pre 9/11, there were something like 20,000 veteran nonprofits registered with the IRS in the country. Now there are over almost 70,000 nonprofits, right? And not all of them are operating with the integrity that I would hope, given the population and the community that we serve. So again, that little bit of breathing room to be thoughtful, calculated, strategic, intentional has gone so far. And the irony is that every time somebody comes to me and says, I want to start a nonprofit, I'm like, please, take a breath. And maybe there's a way to pull your big, hairy, audacious goal into the mission of Reveille, where we can create the infrastructure, offer the overhead and the captive audience for people to push out that passion. So whether you are a financial planner that wants to hold courses, or you're a lawyer that has a skill set in VA disability claims appeals, all of that is things that we want to offer in our space. And I feel like if I continued without COVID to move 120 miles an hour, we wouldn't have slowed down long enough to, one, be where we are now, but also not have done it the right way. So yes, the irony is that I will tell everyone, please, be thoughtful about starting a nonprofit. And then I went and did it myself. But the goal really is to create that ecosystem and then house it right in a single point of entry, a one-stop shop where we promote access and equity, because you don't know what you don't know until you need to know it. And at that point, by the time you get to the right resource, it might be too late. And Reveille ensures that if you're looking for a resource, a connection, a community, a peer support group, that you go to one place, and we will ensure that you get where you need to go the first time.
And what a great approach for you guys to slow down to speed up, right? That's what we always
Yeah,
say,
that's a good
right?
way to put it.
And no, and wonderful, because a lot of people try to push through the pandemic period and morph quickly, right?
Yep.
And there was Vince and I have heard the word pivot more than what probably we ever wanted, but
Yeah.
everybody was concentrating on how do we pivot to this, how would we pivot to that, and you chose to say, how do we become better and
Mm,
pull back
yeah.
and make this even better, so that when we do go out again, it's ironclad, to the point to say, hey, if you got a nonprofit idea, don't rush to it. How about let's see
Yes.
how we can collaborate and make
Yeah.
this thing work. There's a lot of lessons learned already here, and I love that you are offering that. So you had this 10-year idea, you slowed down to speed up, and now it's out. So what's on the horizon for Reveille Grounds?
Yeah. Man, so many things. And my husband would laugh if he heard that I just said that I slowed down and to speed up, as you said. But because he just knows this overactive neurodiversity that he married is constantly planning the next step. But right now we're still putting those bricks in the ground to lay out the infrastructure. We know that we need to get this right the first time. And full disclosure, a big part of that is building relationships and with funding relationships. So right now we're running a capital campaign, and we are asking people to kind of take a risk on us. Nothing like this exists across the country. There are a couple of models that are probably adjacent to what we want to build. Combined Arms in Houston, the South Dakota Veterans Alliance, even Dog Tag Bakery in DC, and in some ways. But we're doing a lot of research. We're talking to a lot of people. Anybody that will have coffee or kind of hear my why, we want to meet with. And that is because we need the depth of this ecosystem and diversity of partners in order to meet everybody that walks in our doors, where they are, and be able to offer them something, even if they don't know exactly what it is that they're looking for. And we are also going through this very exciting, very terrifying process with an architect and a general contractor to work on our vision for what our actual build out will be. So we have identified a building in the city of Baltimore with a landlord who is just as excited about us moving in as we are to be there. It's in a great part of the city. I worked for the Mission Continues for 4 years, and in 2019 we deployed 100 veterans from across the country for a mass deployment in this exact same neighborhood. So we are working to build relationships with those community partners, funding partners. I've been doing a lot of research about all of the veteran resource groups or affinity groups in the city, through companies that have aggressive veteran hiring initiatives or a culture that supports military spouses and transitioning service members. And we are building that ecosystem, and we are taking the steps to house it. So if all goes well, in spring 2023, which is seeming very, very close now that I say that out loud to you all, we are hoping to open the doors on Reveille Grounds, so Baltimore's very first veteran ecosystem and community engagement center.
Katie, I have goosebumps because I'm just so.
You better come up here for that ribbon cutting.
We will. I will try to definitely make it up there and definitely donate to the cause, because I know that this nonprofit of yours, Reveille Grounds, will be a testament to meet up with the other great nonprofits out there. Mission Continues, WWP, Dog Tag Bakery. I know that this is going to happen. You put a lot of thought, love, tears, and sweat into it, and it will become
just a few of those. Yeah,
just a few, but it will be something really worthwhile, because you're meeting the veteran, the military community where they're at, right? And this ecosystem. Yes. So love hearing all that. And folks who want to know how to reach them, they're going to have to wait to the very end. So let's transition a little bit and talk a little about leadership. Hence the leadership void. So Katie, what do you do in any spare time that you have that helps you thrive in your professional life?
Well, the other gift of COVID was a hard stop, right? And we all experienced that, and it looked differently. But in March 2020, I was pregnant with my second son, who was then born in June 2020. And the world was a little bit scary. And I was realizing that the pace that I had been trying to maintain as a mom, as a professional, as a caregiver and family support member to my husband was not one that was the best support of my family, the community that I still want to serve, and frankly myself. So I took some time to pause. I did have this little gift of a family leave after my son was born, in which case I had even more of a hard stop. And I really did a lot of reflecting. And I also took time to remind myself that I am also a military spouse. I've been in this space for so long that most people assume that I love my job and that's why I do it. And that is true. I've worked for a few different roles where I say that I just feel so privileged and humbled to be able to get to do that. But there is no line in the sand for me. I go, I run a project, a service project, an event, a conference. Last week I was with the AMVETS for their national convention in New Orleans. And, when I'm offline at night, I step right into my mom hat, my wounded spouse hat. And I was able in COVID to be like, there are programs and services out there that I am also entitled to, so I took the opportunity to take a spouse course through Project Opportunity with, for entrepreneurship just for spouses. And the women I met in that group continue to be my village and encourage me and help me navigate this world. This is all new to me. I never once would have told you that I had desires to be an entrepreneur. But I also learned in that class that which is something I've said to others for years, right? Is that if you can't pour from an empty cup, right? If I'm not taking care of myself, I was destined for a pretty epic crash and burn. And thankfully the universe did that for me, maybe by way of the pandemic and made me really stop and evaluate what was important. So since then, I work hard. That will always be ingrained in who I am, and my family is a priority, but I've also built in time to ride my motorcycle. I've started exercising again, which is pretty much the first time since, I entered this fast-paced veteran nonprofit space. And it's pretty amazing that I've gotten to a point where I'm probably more effective and successful, for lack of a better term, than I've ever been, but I'm also in better shape than I was in college. And I feel like I have the space and the ability to say no. So all of that to say, COVID, the pandemic, I don't know that we are post-pandemic. I think the verdict is still out on that one, but has given me the opportunity to remind myself that the grace that I'm able to extend other people, I need to give to myself as well in order to be fully present for my big, hairy, audacious goals. The little boys who are going to know that their mom is out there trying to change the world. And I plan to take them along with me as I do it. So.
What a wonderful journey they have in store for themselves. And I
Buckle
tell
up,
you,
kids.
but so good to hear all that you have learned along the way. The heart stop. Hey, sometimes life will bring it because you need it. And I'm sure that undoubtedly there was a lot of loss. There's still a lot of loss. You're right. It's not post-pandemic. I think it's post-pandemic fear right now. Well, folks are more, inapt or apt to go out and do some things. And so that's why you see that. But, in life, we learn a lot of things. You mentioned the comment about the empty cup, which is something that Vince and I have always said as well. But, as you go through all these little, stages in developing your company and developing yourself, what advice did you receive that you would like to pass on to an emerging leader today?
Yeah. So a little piece about my story that a lot of people don't know is that I'm a military spouse. I was born into a military family. My brother served, my grandfather served, but I was actually a United States Peace Corps volunteer. And I, showed up overseas, fresh out of college, ready to save the world, which is no longer a term that I use because I was humbled pretty epically during those first couple of years in Eastern Europe. Frankly, the only skill that I brought to them that my community in Bulgaria didn't already have was fluent English, right? And a whole lot of enthusiasm. But I mean, these were people that were more educated, more experienced than I was. And I had to learn very quickly from them and in a very direct way that I needed to spend more time asking questions and listening than I did needing to tell them what it is that they needed. Because frankly, I was a military kid, so I might have had a little bit more life experience than others, you know, in their early 20s. But really, I was in no position to walk into this small town in Bulgaria and offer anything other than my desire to be there, right? And that's a lot. Don't get me wrong. I think that they needed that diversity of thought and perspective the same way that I did. But I had to learn that instead of saying like, oh, this is what I did in America, you know, this is what you need, I had to ask, right? And that's a tenet that I've taken through, you know, my community-based work with the Mission Continues and at Wounded Warrior Project, sitting at bedside. You know, I could look at a family and assume or make a guess as to what they need, but I wouldn't really know unless I asked, right? And sometimes it took some relationship building and trust building in order to get to the point where that question was received well and trusted, right? But it's also something that I project and try to harbor with my very being as a leader. You know, with partners, you know, I want to make sure that we are, as I'm pulling people into our ecosystem at Reveille and I'm building strategic partnerships in my day job at AMVETS, it's really about that mutually beneficial relationship and ensuring that that return on investment is coming from all angles, right? And I think that's something that's so missed with leaders and managers right now. So communication is big for me, ensuring that people have the tools that they need and me not being able to assume what those tools are. And, you know, sitting down with somebody and asking, you know, what is your communication style? How often do you want to check in? And then the other thing that I wish I heard more from my own leaders as I've come up in this professional world is frankly, I don't know. You know, I've worked for leaders that will just talk long enough that maybe I will extract the answer I'm looking for, or maybe I forgot what it was that I asked for. And my favorite character in a leader is to be humble enough to say, I don't know, let me find out and I'll get back to you. And there's definitely a lot of opportunities where I just want to dive in and bulldoze because you know, if I offer anything in this world or nothing, like it is my passion and enthusiasm. So it is very easy for me to want to dive in, put my boots on the ground, which is where I am my happiest, but really asking questions, prioritizing communication, and being humble enough to say, I don't know, let me find out, I'll get back to you. I'd love to hear that more in my world.
Well, definitely. This is a bookmarker right here. You know, I love what you're saying, Katie, because it's so true. And asking questions, being curious, being humble, you know, being authentic, and knowing that when you go into a situation or a culture, you don't have all the answers. So, you know, you're right. Ask those questions. How do you like to communicate? How often? So on. So great advice you're giving our audience today. Katie, what memorable leadership aha moments have you most recently remember or that you would like to convey to our audience?
Yeah. You know, there are so many, and I feel like I've just been blessed with a lot of different experiences. But I think that it's kind of, you know, a continuation of what I just said about, you know, a leadership tenet that I believe so strongly in. And this is going back a little bit further than I have to, but to my time at the Mission Continues when I hosted that mass deployment in Baltimore City. And it was incredible. Like the opportunity that I was given, I knew that mass deployment was going to be in Baltimore in 2019 when I was hired in 2017, which was a long runway, more than any other city impact manager had ever been given. And I had this incredible opportunity to learn and relearn that ability to be humble and ask questions, but walking neighborhoods with community leaders and champions and asking them what their vision was for that community or that vacant lot, that schoolyard, you know. And I think when I say that was the lesson I took from Peace Corps, which is I mean, man, 15 plus years ago now, it's one that I have to be proactive and constantly reminding myself that that is something important. Because, when I walked into this role with The Mission Continues, it was, this is my city. I'm passionate and I'm ready to impact change here, especially after, being at Wounded Warrior Project, when my area of responsibility was Northern Virginia, all the way through Maryland into Delaware. And I missed the city that I lived in. So when I was with The Mission Continues, I got to see my city in a new way. I got to think about the assets that veterans bring to the table and that, very unique leadership perspective. And that is really where Reveille was born, right? In some ways, I've been thinking about this model and vision for 10 years, but it was that process, that aha process of going from, you need to plan this event in Baltimore and host 1,000 community volunteers and 100 veterans from all over the country. And I am so grateful that I got to go through that, because I saw my veteran community, my active duty community in a new way, my city in a new way. Because let's be honest, Baltimore can have a little bit of a challenging rap, and there's so much beauty here, like the resilience of people, and Reveille is really going to exist because those are 40 long miles between Baltimore and Washington, D.C. And I believe that this city deserves the same kind of emphasis and allocation of resources that our nation's capital does. We have Fort Meade in our backyard, and defense contractors who get out of the military and settle in this area because it is a world of opportunity. That moment was being boots on the ground in Baltimore after 2 years of planning this mass deployment event, arm in arm with the community partners that are doing this work 365 days a year, asking them what their vision is for their neighborhood, their block, their community, the people they serve, and then spending time brainstorming with them on how we actually make it happen. So that's just to tie it back into what I said about like asking questions, because I think we don't do enough of that, and especially when you're talking about the integrity of grassroots community-based work, it is all about the integrity of your relationships with people, earning that trust, and then delivering on a promise, right? Like, those broken promises, this is a city built on that. And The Mission Continues. It wasn't a perfect event. There was more we could have done. But I believe wholeheartedly that we went about that event in the right way, and the trust that our community gained by doing it the right way is the reason that Reveille is going to happen in the next year.
And I love your definite affirmation there of what will come. That is a huge part and a component in leadership. That not only you can see the way ahead, how to strategically partner with those stakeholders that will make the ultimate decision, right? We're going there trying to help, but you can't help something that you don't know is needed. And so great summary and great lesson to leaders today that are listening. Ask the questions, because you could come in with a white horse, shining armor, but if you're not needed, it's for loss. Now, you talked about the challenges that are already set internally within the city, relationship between cities and neighboring cities, and the ever present challenge of that community relationship. How do you build that? So what certain strategies do you use with your team or with the community to deal with those changes and challenges that come up?
Yeah, I think that for me, a lot of it starts with, asking the right questions and building those relationships. And we got a lot of goodwill based out of that mass deployment event, because people saw us and they saw us go through the planning and then the execution. And that has served us well and gone a long way. But I'm not done learning, right, what the needs are of this city. And for me, it's pursuing as many learning opportunities as I can. I'm currently in the 2022 cohort of Leadership Baltimore, which has been an incredible way to peel back the layers of history This is an industrial city that is right on the water. We are a working waterfront, and we still hold a lot of that history. But we're also a city that has known a lot of racism and segregation, and it's systemic and it goes back a long way. And I'm not from here. I moved here 10 years ago. Somebody will probably have to drag me out kicking and screaming, but I still have a lot to learn and a lot of people to earn that trust. So I think that, yes, continuing to ask those questions, but I think I've made that point clear, but seizing opportunities to learn. And then also the whole point of Reveille is because there's a lot of mission creep in the veteran space. There's a lot of duplication of services. Historically, veteran organizations sometimes struggle to collaborate, and I would assume that's pretty typical across the nonprofit landscape, not just in the veteran space, but that is where I have staked my claim, so that's what I can speak to. But I want to see a place where instead of me saying I need to start a program to meet this need, I want to constantly hold myself accountable and be held accountable by our members, by my board, that we don't need to be in this space because XYZ organization is already doing it. Like when I spoke about this, when I started throwing out this idea of Reveille, that coffee was an important part of that. When I lived in Eastern Europe, it was how meetings happened and decisions were made. It brought people together, and we could work an 8-hour workday and accomplish nothing. At the end of the day, we'd go out for coffee and I'd be up all night, but we would have gotten the conclusion and the answer to whatever it was that we were working on. So here in Baltimore, I had it in my head that in addition to figuring out Reveille, I also had to figure out how to run a coffee shop. And that was a gift from my project opportunity cohort, where somebody was like, why? Find somebody who does that, does it well, partner with them and do it. And that was like, of course, why didn't I get there? So now in the planning phase, we've been working with Vagrant Coffee, which is a minority and veteran-owned business right here in Baltimore, Maryland. I hope, we're still working out all the details if they have the bandwidth and capacity to join us in this mission and open our doors collectively. But that is the model that I'm constantly asking for accountability. So when the same owner, a Marine of that coffee shop, was like, can we also figure out a way to pull in physical health and wellness? And he admitted to me that since he got out of the Marines and didn't have that group suck reality of PT, like it's been hard for him to find something that he truly enjoys. So I reached out to the Catch a Lift Fund, which is local here to Baltimore and paying for gym memberships for combat veterans across the country. And we're now working together and hoping that since they are now a CrossFit affiliate, that they will be building us a mini box right there within our footprint, So it's just when somebody tells me, oh, I'd really like to see a headshot clinic come through Reveille, or a financial readiness class, or transition preparation for active duty service members, or spouses who are still looking for that orientation to what it means to be a military spouse, that we can offer all of that. But I want to be clear that Reveille will not be offering all of that, right? Like we have a building and all of the infrastructure and support that you need to execute that mission, to try something, to dip your toe into the water. And we can also provide the communication, the technology, the case management and care coordination, as well as the captive audience for other people to execute their own missions well. Well, we just want to house it.
Katie Kilby, you have heard from the founder and the visionary of Reveille Grounds, and starting out in Baltimore City next year in a brick and mortar, hopefully in Florida in 4 or 5 years. I'm gonna put it out there.
It's coming.
But folks that are listening in, Katie, how do they get a hold of you or Reveille Grounds to donate, be part of the mission or the cause?
Yeah, absolutely. So there is a QR code floating above my head, but for those of you that can't see that, we are reveillegrounds.com, and that is pretty much that houses our why, the dates for our upcoming musters, some links to donate towards our capital campaign, as well as the incredible partners that we've already been working with to kind of bring this vision to reality. But if all else fails, I can also be found at Katie at reveillegrounds.com.
Outstanding. And folks, if you are watching this, we're going to make sure that you can see that on the video and you can snap a picture of that, go right to it. If you're not and you're hearing this, then I'll make sure that also we have that as part of the show notes so that you can just go ahead and click on that and visit Reveille Grounds. Katie, it has been an amazing time
I
spent here.
appreciate you both. Thank you.
Listening to all that has transpired, how you think, and I love the fact that you are bridging relationships, right? All businesses, if you don't bridge relationships, it's your time is on the clock, right? But you're doing that with the community, and once you're woven into the community fabric. Yeah, hey, stand by to stand by. That's how we say in the military
I
because
like that.
things are just going to flourish. So thank you for all that you do.
Thank you. Thank you both for having me. This makes me very excited to throw it out into the universe and also update people on how far we've come. And I look forward to whatever's next.
Absolutely. And if you want to get a hold of us, theleadershipvoid@gmail.com is a way to get us and get a hold of us to curate your questions. Enrique and I will look at who you have coming on. And so you have a guest you're thinking about, let us know, theleadership@gmail.com. And also we do two things. We do radio check first and the 15th of every month. What we do is we get our community together, our veterans, military, and first responders to check in. LinkedIn Lives, 1900, 7 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Get ready on September 1st and again on the 15th. So we do it every 1st and the 15th like a payday. And this episode and all these episodes are possible from Home Team Mortgage, our sponsor. Thank you for sponsoring us. But today is all about Katie Kilby. So Katie, Reveille Grounds is broken ground and will continue to break grounds. The mission, the cause is phenomenal. Thank you for being on the show.
Thanks for having me, guys. Appreciate it.